Welcome to the Fantasy Football Hub YouTube channel. Today I'm joined by the big man Bakar to preview Gameweek 36. Bakar, pleasure to have you back on, mate. You're now inside the top 50k and you've had 11 green arrows in a row. This is some run you're on. How are you doing and how is your FPL team?
Hello, Jack. Hello, welcome to all the listeners and viewers. Yeah, thankfully, I've been doing great in FPL. This run of 11 green arrows has put me in a decent position. I'm now 47k with 3 game weeks to go. Yes, I don't have any chips available, but I think the news that there will be no blanks or doubles has kind of worked in my favor because I won't have a chip available, and now I can now sort of focus my 3 free transfers on single game weeks. What has went right has been the fact that I wildcard in game week 30. That has been a good success. I have also obviously gotten a bit of share of luck, but I assume that the chip strategy has worked well, and the fact that I planned for the doubles and the blanks and played around it has kind of worked a treat. So yeah, I'm glad that things have gone really well in recent weeks, and after a relatively poor start of the season, I've recovered to a very respectable position.
56 points last time out. Happy with that? Was there anything you were very disappointed with, or overall you got to take a green? I mean, another solid green arrow you got.
It was a good week. I mean, Eze's 10 points at the end were very welcome. I was playing Martinez over Henderson all week, but then decided to hedge my bets because I was also playing cons, and I generally did think that Fulham would score, which is why I decided to make that make that substitution. It didn't exactly work well. I sort of lost 6 points there. It was a 6 point swing, but it's fine. I was sort of hedging my bets, and had had the variance gone the other way, then uh, it could have been brutal as well. So I'll take what I got. I think 56 points is a very reasonable score.
I saw you smiling there, and I think in knowing or thinking that I didn't realize that, thinking that I was being mean on purpose because you benched Martinez for and played Henderson. I actually didn't even realize that. I'm going to be completely honest, but I like the fact that you smiled because that's the sort of thing I would do if I had realized. Anyway, let's talk about your team for this week. Double Arsenal defense against Liverpool doesn't seem great. You don't have Mateta, which is interesting because a lot of the people in the FPL community are deciding what potentially to do with him this week and what replacements to go for. And if you do want a really detailed breakdown of the budget forwards, then in yesterday's episode with Abdul, we went through that for a good 10-15 minutes. We're obviously going to talk about that in this video as well, though. Probably not in as much depth. So yeah, just run me through your team right now and what you're currently thinking.
And so I have one free transfer. I'll get 3 for the end of the season. So now I have to basically decide where to use them and plan for them. Obviously, because the team has been planned for blanks and doubles, it isn't exactly optimal for game week 36, 37, 38, especially the defense is an area of concern. As you can see, I have double Arsenal, double Villa, potentially even Newcastle or Chelsea. Not exactly great. So I'll have to sort of figure out what to do with the defense, because that's firstly the critical area of concern, as you rightly pointed out. Because when you look at the attack, I'm actually benching Rodgers this week, so I feel as if there's absolutely no need to use a transfer on the attack. Uh, I think Sarr and Eze are potentially better options to play against Spurs, who might again rest and rotate at the weekend ahead of their after this fixture of theirs in the Conference League. So there's a chance that the Palace guys can do well. I will be benching Rodgers because out of all the attackers, he has the least favorable fixture. Benching Rodgers has not exactly gone well for me this season. Whenever I've benched him, he inevitably has ended up scoring. Whenever I've played him, he hasn't given me enough points. But it is what it is. I don't think I'll change the attack. But yeah, I mean, if I'm looking at something, it's probably a defensive transfer.
Yeah, interesting. A lot of people aren't looking at that this week, which makes this episode interesting because I don't know. I sometimes find that when you go on Twitter or you watch other YouTube videos, you feel like everyone is sort of making the exact same moves. And don't get me wrong, a lot of people are this week, but it looks like you won't be, which is interesting. And obviously, other people out there, other managers, will be thinking about defensive moves as well. They might be in a similar position to you. I don't think double Arsenal defense away at Liverpool is that good. It's probably better than it was earlier in the season before Liverpool secured the title. But yeah, what are you thinking then in terms of defenders? I've got the the defenders with the highest predicted points for the rest of the season, up on the right of the screen. What do you think about any of those options?
Yeah, so basically, when I look at my defense, the fixtures for 37 and 38 are actually all right. So effectively, the defense for this week is actually very weak because double Arsenal away to Liverpool isn't great. Even single Arsenal away to Liverpool isn't great. I expect Liverpool to do well because they're playing at home. Uh, so I basically need to address that. I'm okay playing Livermento, even though the fixture isn't great. There's a chance that Newcastle keep Chelsea out. I think I'll be playing Martinez over Henderson. So it's basically either a case of playing Consa or using a transfer on defense this week. I'm not exactly looking at 37 or 38 because when you look at my defense and the players that I have, the fixtures for 37 and 38 are actually all right. So I don't need a defender for those two games. It's just who has the highest predicted points. So now when you look at the predicted points you can see on screen, when you look at it from this week's perspective, you look at the Forest guys and they're right up there. Even when you look at the market odds, the bookmaker odds, Forest are the most likely team to keep a clean sheet this week. I think there's over a 50% chance of it happening. So I think I'll probably go with the Forest defender if I make a defensive transfer. And that someone could be Milenkovic or Williams. I think if I'm picking one, it's probably going to be Williams actually because he's more attacking. I watched the game against Palace and he was like really, really attacking. So I think I'd probably go with Williams. He's cheaper as well. He gives me enough funds, crucially, to get Palmer next week if required. Now, I think this is a very critical point here. I will be selling Saliba because Arsenal's fixtures, they're all right, but as I'm only focusing on this week, Arsenal have the weakest fixture, and I'm happy having Kivior anyway. So if I'm selling someone, it has to be Saliba because that would then allow me to do a Palace mid to Palmer next week. Now, there are two things that I would like to add at this point. I think there's a very good chance that Palmer would be my captain in 37, if I look at it that way. When you look at the fixtures next week, Liverpool are playing away to Brighton, which I think is an all right fixture, but I'm not exactly sure about Salah's ceiling at this point and the way Liverpool are playing. I think he's one that potentially could be worth taking on with his high ownership. City are playing Bournemouth, but then again, I'm not exactly convinced about their X-Men's. I don't even know whether Marmoush will be an option at that point. So Palmer at home to Man United does feel the safest. If I'm picking one, it's going to be Palmer. That's why I want him for 37. The second thing is they're in game week 37 because that fixture for Palace against Wolves at home is like 3 days after the FA Cup final. We could potentially see some rotation there as well. So I would feel a bit uneasy playing two of my mids. There's a case of moving one of them on for Palmer in 37. And that's basically a transfer I'm pretty sure I will be making in 37. And then Palace have Liverpool away in 38. So I definitely want a Palace mid out for Palmer in 37. A, because Palace mids will see rotation. B, because they're playing Liverpool away in 38. And C, because I see Palmer as the best captain in 37 for the reasons mentioned. Now, I don't have the funds to do Sar or Eze to Palmer in one move in 37, which means that either I save a transfer this week and next week I use a transfer to fund that transfer, or if I move Saliba to Neco Williams this week, not only am I improving my defense this week, it also allows me to do a Palace mid to Palmer next week. These are the only two realistic options for me, save or do Saliba to Neco Williams. The only thing that is slightly worrying me about making that transfer, Saliba to Neco Williams, is that I'm not exactly convinced on Marmoush's minutes for the rest of the season. And if Marmoush, for example, if Haaland is back, if Marmoush loses his place by 37, I might want Marmoush out as well in 37. And if I make the Neco Williams transfers this week, then I will not be able to do Marmoush to budget forward next week to fund Palmer. So that's something which is playing in my head. If I am fully convinced that Marmoush will be a realistic option in 37, then I'm not making. Then I'll probably make the Saliba to Williams transfer. But if I'm not convinced that Marmoush will be nailed in 37, then it's a very tricky decision. I might be better off saving this week.
Yeah, very interesting. I don't know. I'm not sure how I feel about Marmoush. I mean, he's been very good for minutes, and he was playing alongside Haaland when Haaland was fit. I think that out of the attackers, I think he probably is the second most nailed attacker, even with Haaland back, because like their wingers recently have been pretty disappointing and they've rotated a lot. And we know with Pep, like it's not just about okay, are my forwards scoring goals or are they, getting assists? It's like their overall play is super important to him. For example, like someone like a Foden, you thought, okay, he came back into the team, got a couple of returns. You're thinking, okay, well, it's Foden, he's back. He's barely played in ages. So like still there's something going on there which Pep's not happy with. Whereas Marmoush has played the vast majority of minutes recently. So I don't know. I still feel like Marmoush is a good hold. It hasn't worked for him in the last few weeks. He's had a few blanks in a row. Been playing off the right as well in the most recent game, which didn't look good at all. But I'm not sure that he's suddenly going to get dropped. I suppose that the thing is there will be rotation after the FA Cup final. Although every game for City is still a must win. It's just how you sort of perceive that. Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting one because I think like going from a Saliba to a Williams is that very necessary? There's a chance that Arsenal could keep a clean sheet in this game. It's
No,
less
I'm going to
likely.
play Konsa. I'm going to play Konsa.
Oh, you're going to play
Konsa over Saliba anyway.
Yeah, but as in
yeah,
because of your
Livermore and
double.
Konsa will play.
Sorry, Konsa will play. You play Livramento?
Both Livermore and Konsa will play. Yes, I'm not going to play any of my Arsenal defenders, irrespective.
Okay. I see. Going against the predicted points there, may I add? But
I'm just looking at the bookmaker odds.
Yeah.
And Arsenal have the lowest chance of a clean sheet.
Wow, interesting indeed.
So it's basically Neco Williams versus Konsa. And then again, I mean, if Marmoush is to keep his place for 37, then I'm happy making that transfer. But look, I also generally over the course of the season, Jack, you must have realized that I've been someone who's been a massive advocate of saving transfers. But we're now getting to a stage where, saving transfers is not exactly that important because there's no doubles. There are only 3 weeks where you can make transfers. There are very limited weeks to gain points. But I mean, this Marmoush thing is adding some uncertainty in my head. And the second thing is that I forgot to mention that Gameweek 38 has historically seen a bit of rotation in teams where there are random injuries. You get some team leaks. We generally see plenty of goals. So 38 is a week where you can target. If I have 2 free transfers potentially in 38, that could be great. But then again, I don't think I will be able to be in that position because in 37 I will need Palmer, and because I will need Palmer, I'll have to make a second transfer to fund him. So yeah.
I think the thing that you got to work out is how likely do you think selling Marmoush actually is? Because if it's very unlikely, then you can do this transfer now. But if it's likely, then the upside of transfers in 38, not for a hit, is big because that is the equivalent of doing, say, Eze to Cliver in 38, which is a transfer that I think most people would love to do. If you're doing that for a hit because you did Konsa to Williams, like comparing the upside of those two moves, you'd much rather do the one in 38.
The thing is, in 37, 38, I'm selling the Palace mids irrespective. If I'm buying Neco Williams this week, that's pretty much my move sorted for the rest of the season. If anything else goes wrong, I'll be probably forced into taking a hit or probably fielding a suboptimal team.
Yeah, but like if you don't get Williams this week and you roll, and then Marmoush becomes an issue, then you don't have to take a hit in 38. Like who did you say you'd sell your you go to Palmer, but then what about in 38? Just for Eze to Cliver or something.
Exactly, Eze to Cliver. Yeah.
I suppose the risk is if Marmoush does become an issue, but then maybe you say, or is it worth the hit? Do I just play Rodgers anyway? But you're expecting the Palace rotation after the cup final. I don't know. It's a tough one. I think it's pretty minimal really. Either way you go, I don't know what I would do. I probably wouldn't do it. What's the upside? Okay, according to this, 1.5 points difference between Williams and Konsa. Is that worth it? And then you play Williams in 37.
No, it's
maybe
as mentioned earlier. I would never have contemplated the transfer.
Yeah.
Had it been at any other stage of the season, but it's the value for transfer isn't that high in my opinion. And secondly, I will need a funding transfer for Palmer in 37 anyway, because I view him as the best captain. So that's the only logic in my head. If this transfer wasn't sort of booked or if it didn't lead to something in 37, I don't think I would be doing it, but it's something I would be doing in 37 regardless. So in 38, irrespective, it's very likely that my transfer is going to be one of the Palace mids to Cliver. So I can see arguments for it both ways, and as you mentioned, it's generally a toss of the coin.
I'm just looking how much you need. So you'd need to find 0.5 if you did Eze up to Palmer in 37. which is Marmoush to, a Wissa or a Wood or a Cunha. You could get to all of those. Like say Marmoush did become an issue quickly. So you could do it by downgrading Marmoush next week. But
That's exactly what I'm referring
yeah,
to.
I don't know. The fact that that's a good point that you need the money anyway. So you're going to have to make one of those moves anyway. What are you thinking right now?
I'll have a look at what Pep says regarding Holland, his availability, the predicted lineups, people I trust from the City fans, and then make an educated call based on that. If Marmoush is expected to be all right for 37, then yeah, I think I'll probably go ahead with the transfer. But
Okay.
if I perceive him to be a bigger risk, then I don't think I will.
Okay. Yeah, it makes sense to me. I want to talk a little bit about Isak because I've seen like quite a bit of stuff over the past few days. I've not really understood it personally. Seen some YouTube videos of people saying, I could potentially sell him this week. What are you thinking with him? Is there any sort of potential that you could sell him? I don't particularly understand it myself. It's Isak. He's been great. Even despite not being in great form recently, he's still scored a couple of goals in the last few matches. He's definitely not on my sell list, but what about yours?
I don't think he's a hard sell. I mean, let's say if you're in a position where you have nothing else to do, then Isak to Wissa or Wood can make sense because Wood and Wissa have the better fixtures this week. But I think that Isak can easily do well against Chelsea this week, so it's
Yeah,
fraught
he
with risk,
can.
especially considering Isak's ownership. But if someone is chasing rank, and when you know that obviously your mini league leader is going to keep Isak, then it's a transfer that you can consider. I'm not totally opposed to it, but in normal circumstances, it's not something I would consider.
Okay, and in terms of replacements, as I said, we spoke about this in depth with Abdul yesterday. So I'll just ask you to rank the three main replacements. Well, I mean, there may not be three. Just what do you think? Potential Marmoush, Isak replacements, and you also have Evan Nilsson already. So yeah, I want to hear your thoughts on where he'd rank too.
It's tricky because I mean Evan Nilsson this week's fixture is all right, but in 37 he's playing City away. So ideally, you want to be bringing in Evan Nilsson in 37 or 38. Even if you're bringing in 37, you're probably going to bring him in just to bench him. So I don't think this is the week necessarily to buy Evan Nilsson. I think if this week I'm buying one, I'm probably going to buy Vissa or Wood. I think both of them are expected to score very similarly. There's nothing between them.
Yeah.
I think I might just lean Wissa because his ownership is relatively low and pretty much everyone owns Mbomo anyway, and he's likely going to be the popular captain this week. So if you're going to benefit from the Brentford attack, it's Wissa is a good way of looking into it,
So I think it's
especially now that the manager has said that Thiago won't start for the rest of the season. So Wissa's pretty much going to play most of the minutes.
okay, interesting. Do you think that's a bit boring? Like that is the move that I'm almost 100% going to do, and I'm like, is that a bit boring? Does it depend on your rank or like your risk appetite at this time of the season?
It's a very subjective call. I don't think there's much in it at all. And again, it's a case of what you're trying to chase. If you're chasing rank, I think Wissa is generally the better player to get. But for example, if your mini league rival owns Wissa, you can just go Wood. I
Yeah.
mean, it's a roll of the dice, basically.
I have one mini league rival who if you're watching this, you know who you are. And I'm not going to reveal what I'm 100% doing in this video, just on the off chance that they might be watching. We're getting to that that stage of the season, isn't it? You can't really.
Yeah, that mini league rival has beaten you two out of the previous 2 seasons since we started working.
So you think we're talking about you?
Jack, so easy.
No, I'm not. You wish I was talking about you, mate. You are. I'm not even thinking about you. I've been thinking about you all season. All season.
Yeah. Anyway,
let me ask you a quick question. Let me ask you a quick question. What does the number 28,382 mean to you?
Yeah, I have selective amnesia when I look at ranks, so I
It's
don't
the
want to talk about
difference in
them.
rank between me and you, and that might be wrong. I have just done some quick maths there on the fly, but nonetheless, yeah, as Bakar says, this would be the first time I've beaten him since doing Fantasy Football Hub videos. So who knows? It could all go wrong. There are still 3 weeks to go. Let's round things off by talking a little bit about chips. The end of the season is pretty boring because I thought there'd be some doubles at least. Thought it'd be a bit of fun. There's nothing, which depending on where you're ranked and what players you've got, I guess is a good thing or a bad thing for your team. But it's just boring anyway. Like, you know, we want doubles, we want blanks. They're more fun. People have saved chips, you know, free hit, assistant manager. People still have those, you know, even bench boost. When are people going to use those? What would you advise as the best weeks now to use those chips if you've still got them?
I think for the free hit, I would almost certainly try and save it till 38 because this week there are not too many differentials to get. I mean, if Haaland is fit and available, and if you get a league that he's starting, then it's a different story. But apart from that, I think 38 is probably the best time because, as mentioned earlier, Game Week 38 does historically see more goals than usual. And in Game Week 38, there's a good chance of leaks as well. You can pick differentials depending on whoever's starting, looking at how your mini league rivals are shaping up, etc. So I think I would try and save it till 38. Also, because it also means that if you free hit this week, you can't save a transfer for next week. So by free hitting in 38, you're potentially allowing yourself to save a transfer this week as well.
That's a good point.
So that's for the free hit. For the assistant manager chip, I think I think a lot of people have actually used it in 35 for those who had it left. A lot of them are on Glasner. I think Glasner is all right. I think that Palace could do well against Spurs this week. I expect them to be depleted. But if you're looking to move to a manager, I think Pep is the safest. If you can't afford Pep or if you have Triple City, then Nuno, obviously, against Forest is against Leicester. Beg your pardon, is the next best alternative. Yeah, but realistically, there are no managers that you can go for table bonus because I mean, if you want to go there, then I mean, you're looking at the likes of Leicester, Ipswich, Southampton this week. So it's a makes a pretty grim reading that.
Okay, final thing. Your recommended transfer for this week is on screen right now. Has this tempted you in any way?
Yes and no, because I can get KDB this week, but even if I do, I think I still prefer Mbomo as my captain. And when I'm sort of ranking transfer, I think buying Palmer next week for captaincy is potentially a better buy than KDB this week. But it's not a bad transfer personally, and I'm actually comfortable with the idea of playing my Palace mids this week. I expect them to do well against Spurs.
Yeah, same. I kind of like if Mateta had a better fixture or didn't have the cup final coming up, I'd be very happy to keep I have triple Palace attack. I'd be happy to keep him because I think it's such a plum fixture, especially after this game that you guys will know the result of now, what happened. We're recording this on Thursday, well, early evening, so don't have time to put the video up before the Tottenham game, but it's a big game. It's a massive game. It's on a plastic pitch. I don't think it's going to be a walkover for Spurs. I think that might be quite a close one, and I'm saying this in the knowledge that you guys now know the score, so I might be completely wrong. I think something could happen there. That's all I'm saying. But anyway, that's going to do it for this one, mate. Thank you very much for your tips and advice. Guys, if you'd like your own recommended transfers like you just saw on screen, something else to think about, link down below to sign up to Fantasy Football Hub. We'll catch you on the next one.